What is going on, everyone? It's your boy Gsluke. Hopefully everyone's having a really solid start to their weekend. I was able to get some golf in today. Of course, now we look at some of the DFS for tomorrow, and my lineup's in a pretty solid shape as well. So overall, feeling pretty good going into this weekend. Hopefully all of you out there in the live stream, in the chat right now, also feeling pretty good going into the weekend. So with that being said, in this video specifically, we're going to be going over exactly what to expect here for round 3 showdown. So we'll talk about some weather. We'll go into my player pool projections, ownership, some strategy talk, and of course, any of your live questions that we have throughout the way. So let's go ahead and start off first with a review of what we saw here in round 2, because of course, when we're trying to take apart showdown, it's always important to really look at round 1 and of course especially round 2. And you can learn about that, particularly with a new golf course. So you can see here in the second round, it played a little bit more difficult than round 1. It played to just 0.13 shots under par, as opposed to the 0.72 that we saw there in round 1. And a lot of that was due to the morning wave. It was not quite as easy as what we saw there on Thursday. And while there still was quite a big difference between the morning and the afternoon wave, it was closer to 0.65 shots than it was the 2.2 shots from day 1. So certainly if you attacked some of those morning players, it was going to be a lot more consistent for showdown today, but it wasn't the end all be all. Of course, some of those guys that were playing in the afternoon still took it to 5-6 under par. I mean, of course, John Rahm, he was one of the people I was willing to play from the afternoon wave, ended up shooting a very good score today. So it was out there, right? I would expect that same type of thing to continue here for tomorrow. So if we take a look at the wind here for Saturday, you'll see very similar. Very low wind in the morning, 2 to 5 miles an hour of sustained winds. And then towards the afternoon, towards the weekend, towards the afternoon there on Saturday of the weekend, there on Saturday, you're going to have 7 to 8 miles an hour sustained, right? That's the same thing that we saw on Friday. If you were to go back to Thursday, they don't have it up here on up on this site anymore. It's the exact same story. So it was a little bit weird to see the scoring average changed so much from round 1 to round 2. Of course, pin locations really dictate a lot of the scoring out there, but also it's getting more firm and fast. You can really see that on the broadcast today. If you're watching on ESPN Plus, the announcers made note of that multiple times, that it was running a lot more difficult today than it was on the first day. They were running a little bit faster, perhaps because they know now that the wind isn't going to be a huge factor on Sunday. Also looking like some beautiful weather, they can afford to make these greens run faster, because usually they're running them at around a 10 or maybe even an 11 on the stimp meter, like what they had for Thursday and Friday, because they're afraid of the wind, right? If it gets in the 30 to 40 mile an hour range, you're not going to be able to stop a golf ball if it's running at anything more than an 11 and a half or 12 on the stimp meter. So I think that was just a little bit of hesitancy with the potential wind over the weekend. But as the forecast clears up, I would expect them just to continue to firm and, make this golf course even more devilish and more fast out there for these players. So in terms of a scoring average, right, today it was 0.13 under par. Now that we have the cut line, a lot of those amateurs were cut out of there. I'd expect it to be right around 0.6, 0.5 shots under par. I'd expect it to improve, even though the conditions should be slightly more difficult. If you're new around here, of course, when you're cutting out the players that aren't playing particularly well, or of course, some of those outlier performances. I mean, there were a 10 over round shot today. There was a 12 over par round shot today. That's going to heavily sway these type of averages. So just keep that in mind when you're taking a look at these round by round averages. Even just 2 to 3 of those outliers where, 3 players combined shoot 30 over par today or something like that, is going to drastically change this average here. Let's go ahead. We'll catch up on chat down here. Then we'll go ahead and hop into the player pool. Down here, we got my brother down here in chat. That's funny. We'll catch up on it down here, though. My brother's down here. First, we have Nick, who says, off DFS subject, but be kind of close to a Knott and Murray pair. That would be pretty cool. Of course, they are getting into fights on the driving range at this point. They both say that they're past the feud, but I don't buy that at all. Forbes says, let's go. What's going on, brother? Catch Me If You Can says, I hope Murray kicks his ass. Absolutely agree. I hope on the range they get into a little bit of scuffle. That'd be pretty cool. Robert Babb says, let's get it. What is going on, dude? Nick says, hopefully Finau sleeps with his putter tonight. He needs to. He needs to sweet talk it. He's got to talk nice to that putter, get it to cooperate, because at this point, man, it's brutal. It's ugly. I mean, you want to puke when you're watching the guy putt because he's missing these 5 to 8 footers on every single hole. So, yeah, I agree. At least he made the cut for us, right? It wasn't that dreadful with it. But I'm going back to him in DFS, as you guys can see on the player poll right here. Just the ball striking has been immaculate, right? Hopefully he can turn it around. Stevenson's in the house. What is going on? He went the Chinese route tonight, Mongolian beef. Damn, I'm ordering dinner after we get off stream here, and I'm probably getting some Chinese food now because I like General Tso's chicken. I'm not a big Mongolian beef guy myself, but we'll have to see. My brother's down here with the whole elbow cough emojis. No idea what he's doing. Catch Moving Hit says, I'm sending Turan a fruitcake. Caleb Turan made the cut, right? That was kind of surprising. I'll be playing him in Showdown tomorrow. I like his upside. Send one to Svensson too. Oh boy. Robert Babb says, I feel like the weatherman in the area is lazy and just posts the same wind miles per hour every day. It's definitely been more than the winds reported all tourney. Yeah, I agree. So that's what I meant about like looking at the recent forecast, everything like that. They're forecasting the same thing, and we're getting the same more severe wind conditions every single day. So I completely agree with you, Robert. I'm not really changing up my analysis there. My brother says he would tear apart this course shoot -10. Sure thing, dude. We played a muni today, and you couldn't shoot under par. But yeah, you're going to take it to 10 under for sure. Maybe if we played a scramble, we could. Ray Flores says, shout out to whoever called a Novak on your show last night. Completely agree. I actually wanted to start off the show with that. Whoever mentioned that, because I ended up playing 25% Novak because of whoever mentioned that, like legitimately, thank you, right? We brought up the shots gain metrics. He gained 3 strokes with the approach play on day one. Today, of course, shot another 5-6 under round, had a really solid day. So I completely agree with you, Ray. That was a unbelievable call. I forget who it was, to be quite honest with you. Nick Mars says Murray would destroy Nah. Absolutely. It's not even the same weight class. Grayson Murray's a pretty big guy. Pretty beefy, pretty strong dude as well. Hits the ball a mile when he's hitting it out there in tour. Yeah, wouldn't even be close. And Nick also says Woodland was awful today too. He was awful with the putter, right? That's going to happen with some of these ball striking first players, right? They're going to have the rounds where they lose with the putter. Those are the type of guys I'm looking for in Showdown. So you'll see both of them are in my player pool. I'm not afraid to go to them, right? A lot of people, they have personal vendettas against players. They act emotionally rather than rationally when they're making their DFS lineups, and they make mistakes as a result, right? You'll hear that in any field that you're in. If you act emotionally rather than with the facts that you're presented, you're going to make mistakes because the human element, right? Emotion, empathy, all those sort of things that come into play, cloud your judgment, right? Particularly when you're trying to do something that's analytical. So just you kind of got to put those type of things aside, right? And just take them for the type of stats that they're putting up, right? First off, Gary Woodland, he's gaining a ton of strokes with the distance, right? Gaining a ton of strokes with the approach play. And over his last 2, maybe even 3 months on the PGA Tour, he's been a streaky putter, right? So we should expect days like today, right? Now, he had a few errant shots, right? He had the one hole with the double bogey that was a little bit ugly. So it wasn't just the putter that was holding him back. No, for Tony Finau, it was pretty much just the putter that was holding him back. So I actually have a little bit more confidence in a Tony Finau tomorrow than I would for a Gary Woodland, but both really high upside plays. You can see I have both of them at right around 22% ownership. Now, considering that there's only 74 players in the field, that's like a player in the 4-round slate being in the 13 to 15% ownership range, right? That's a significant ownership discount than what we were getting just 3 days ago on guys that in a single round sample size, I think are even more valuable than they are on 4-round sample sizes, right? Because Tony Finau, it's not likely he goes out there and gains strokes with the putter for 4 rounds, right? It's not likely he has a ceiling performance for the maybe 1-2 rounds out of his 4 rounds. Same thing with a Gary Woodland, right? So you want to target them when you have those ceiling type of performances. So in Showdown, they have even more upside. So that's the one thing I want to say about them, right? Because I know we mentioned Tony Finau before. I know you mentioned me about that, Nick. You were on the Tony Finau train. If you're using that same type of logic, you should certainly be on the Gary Woodland train. And I don't know if you were planning on playing him or not, but that's usually something that works out in Showdown. Today didn't end up working out for Tony Finau, right? We used that narrative to go back to him today. Similar situation with the ball striking. Gary Woodland was a completely different play, right? He was coming in with really good form. He looked really solid. He was a little bit chalky there in round 2. So not necessarily the same calculus involved within taking down these plays. But that type of mindset is what you want to do for all of your plays, right? You want to use all of the facts that you have at your disposal rather than acting emotionally. And you'll have people, guys, that make their player pool for Showdown just based on their lineups for 4-round, right? The guys that they don't have, they'll try and quote unquote hedge their 4-round lineups by taking these guys in Showdown. If you do that, you're going to be limiting your ROI long-term in terms of your DFS budget. And it's just, you got to act rationally. Don't act emotionally. All right, let's talk about these guys up top. So John Rahm, going to be a play once again there at $11,000. Just the guy looks completely unstoppable at this point. He's gaining off the tee, gaining on approach. The putter has been kind of come and go at this point. He's had a few times where the putters kind of bailed him out. He's made some 10 to 15 footers. And of course, he's been the John Rahm of old, missing a few 5 to 7 footers. So that's just kind of his game. You know, even when he's playing his best golf, he's not going to be pristine with the short game, but he's been more than serviceable this week. Of course, he's in first place of this golf tournament. I think that tells you everything you need to know. And honestly, could be playing better. He could very easily have been 16 to 18 under par at this point, and it would not surprise me just based on how he was hitting the ball. Of course, just how well-rounded he is. He's not putting himself in trouble in any one area. Just if he can clean it up a little bit, right, start to make a few more putts from that 5 to 10 foot range, John Rahm could easily take this place to another 7 to 8 under round. He doesn't even have to have his best stuff. So you saw that there in round one, right? When he shot 7 under par, he didn't even have his best stuff. He had one lucky chip in, which of course, gave him an extra birdie there. But outside of that, wasn't really anything spectacular. So I'll be going there. Talked about Tony Finau a little bit. The ball striking still looked great today. Had him on Prize Picks, had the over on him on greens, and I believe he only missed 2 greens on the entire day. So 16 for 18 with his greens in regulation. Just outstanding stuff for Tony. Just needs to make a few putts, for goodness sakes. Sebastian Munoz also has been really solid with the ball striking. Now today wasn't a ceiling round for him, right? Went out there, had a just decent round, a few under par. But at $9,700, I think it's a more than fair price tag. You can take somebody like a Tony Finau and a Sebastian Munoz in a lineup and still have a competitive salary for your rest of the 4 spots in your lineup. So I could certainly see myself getting Munoz. Anytime you're playing Showdown, he's always a solid play. He's one of the most aggressive players on the PGA Tour, high birdie or better percentage, high eagle rate as well. And when he gets that putter rolling, you're going to need him in Showdown. He's going to shoot something like 6 to 7 under par. He's gaining significantly with the flat stick, which is certainly more than possible there. Aaron Wise is going to be criminally underowned. The guy hardly made the cut after being in the top 5 to start the day, which he almost pulled a full Keegan on us, right? Going from the top 5 to missing the cut. But at $9,500, I'll have him in a few lineups. Very similar, right, to these other 3 players here. Similar to a Tony Finau, Munoz, and a Gary Woodland, I would say. And the fact that they're all ball striking first players that don't always have the flat stick. And you really saw that today. Guys like a Tony Finau and Gary Woodland struggled because of the putter. Now, Sebastian Munoz, he still shot under par, right? So the putter wasn't absolutely atrocious for him. But Aaron Wise was another one of those players where it was atrocious, right? He went out there, I believe, lost 2 strokes to the field today with the flat stick, which is pretty hard to do, to be quite honest with you. To lose 2 whole strokes in just 18 holes, I mean, that means you're missing a few 5-footers. It means you're pretty much not buying a putt all day from 10 to 15 feet. Just not a good look, but certainly something that he could turn around. We'll catch up on chat before we hop into this 8K range here. Nick says, I'm guilty of holding grudges with players, but I'm getting better. Yeah, it's just something you kind of got to check yourself on, right? So for me, there's certain players like Tringale, right, that I have a personal vendetta against. Today, he burned me again, of course. Hit 14 greens in regulation, the only prop on all of Prize Picks that I got wrong today, but still profited. But really I would have made over $6,000 if the Tringale didn't hit over 13 fairways. So I have grudges against players, right? But just look at last week. I played Tringale in 30% of my lineups. He was one of my core picks, somebody I talked about a lot here on the channel going into last week. And he played pretty well, right? It's just, you kind of got to put some of those things aside. Just, again, act rationally. And I have to catch myself at times too, Nick. You're not the only one who's guilty of that move. I think all of us are at some point. Nick says, still a new one read. He's been better. I don't really know if I buy it, to be quite honest with you, man. It's been 2 rounds. It's I'm not sure I'm stuck on it, right? Because look at the guys he's priced around, right? You have guys that you have legitimate upside with. Cameron Champ has also looked really good this week. He's a long player. And one thing you should tell about this player pool, I guess I should have mentioned it at the beginning, it's all heavily favored towards distance because the player pool, the leaderboard, the guys that made the cut is heavily swayed towards the guys that have distance. And of course, we expected that going into the week because it is a long golf course. It has all these really long par 4s. So to get to a ceiling performance, you realistically have to be able to check off 1 or 2 of those 500+ yard par 4s and make birdies on them, right? You're going to have to make, 7, 8, maybe even 9 birdies on the day to crack the optimal Showdown lineup. And Patrick Reed, I don't see him birdieing those holes. I mean, he doesn't have the length to get there. It's at best like he's playing a par 5 when he's playing those 500-yard par 4s. So he just doesn't have the distance for me, right? So he might look a little bit better, right? It's just been 2 rounds. I'm not sure I'm willing to jump on that bandwagon. Same thing with Kevin Na, right? I like Kevin Na. He's actually been much better than Patrick Reed of late, right? Multiple top 12 finishes in a row for Kevin Na, but I'm not even willing to play him, even though he is short, right? It's all because he's relatively short off the tee. That's just an issue here for me, especially in terms of upside. Abraham Answer, for example, that's why he's down as a no. So I should have mentioned that to really start this is you got to have the distance to get to a ceiling performance. We've seen that. I mean, just going over to Data Golf, just to give you an idea of the lowest rounds today, let's go ahead and talk about some of them. Doug Gim, relatively long off the tee. Miliano Grillo, relatively long off the tee. John Rahm, long. Alex Smalley, bomber. Adam Long, as you would expect, is long off the tee. Patrick Reed, right? He's one of the shorter hitters up top. That's an exception to the rule. Another exception to the rule, I would say, would be Morton Trainer. He shot 6 under par, right? But here's some more bombers that were up top. Smotherman, Wallace, Andrew Novak's relatively long off the tee. Brandon Hagee, Hank Lebioda gets it out there a long way. Just, you can see all of these long hitters vastly outweigh the shorter hitters that we have up top. So for me, I'm going to try and focus on, the more likely scenario, which for me is from a skill set perspective, is the guys that are long off the tee, that are aggressive, and of course, that are going to be low owned, right? From a game theory perspective, we also want to make sure that we're taking advantage of as much as that is humanly possible. So that's the explanation there on Patrick Reed. It's also why guys like an Abraham Answer are down as a no. Also why guys like a Cameron Tringale are down as a no for this slate. Even Mark Hubbard, right? I mean, going down, a lot of the guys that are just completely excluded from my player pool are guys that I would, quantify or characterize as relatively short players on the PGA Tour. Let's catch up on chat down here. Draft, of course, Rex says odds on Rahm not winning. Oh boy, you're putting me on the spot here. I mean, I told you guys before the week, I thought he was winning this golf tournament. Let me know what the sportsbook have his odds at. And I'll let you know whether I agree with that. I think it's higher or lower than what the sportsbook have it at, because I would assume right now he's close to even money. If I had to make a line on it, just, without running any numbers, without doing anything like that, I'd put him probably even money right now. So I'd say it's like a 50-50 odds for me, Draft, of course. But let me know what the sports books have it at, because just, out of curiosity, I'd like to see where they have them at. All right, moving on a little bit further, let's talk about this 8K range. If there's anybody that you want me to do a deep dive on, we can. More than willing to do so. Sahith Theegala at $8,900. He's a high upside player. We saw it in day one. He went out there, shot 6 under par. Today had the more difficult conditions. That's why we didn't have him in the player pool and really struggled. You would expect that. He's a high ball flight type of player. And now that he's just 4 under par, right? He's towards the middle of the pack, right? He's going to be teeing off right around 11:30, 12, towards the midday local time over there. Again, we don't have the tee times yet, so we're not certain on when they'll be teeing off. But he's going to be teeing off towards the middle of the day. And that should be when the conditions are at the very least average, right? They're not going to be super difficult like they could be towards 1, 2, 3 p.m. towards the beginning of some of these, guys towards the top of the leaderboards rounds. Guys like John Rahm, Sebastian Munoz, Patrick Reed, Cameron Champ. They're going to be teeing off when we have the quote-unquote worst conditions. And kind of like Robert said before, we don't know how bad the conditions are going to get, right? Because for whatever reason, the wind finder is saying the same thing every day, right? Let's look at this. On Thursday, 2 to 7 miles an hour the entire day. Today, it's at 2 to 8 miles an hour the entire day. Now, anybody that was watching on TV knows that it wasn't 2 to 8 miles an hour winds. So it's interesting. We're going to have to try and it's hard to quantify the morning versus the afternoon wave type of thing. But the one thing we know about PGA DFS, we know about just weather in general in terms of wind, is it gets worse in the afternoon, right? It always tends to get worse around 2, 3 p.m. and usually lasts until sundown. Now, that's everywhere that I've been on Earth that happens. There's not really any places where it's going to get super windy in the morning and then die down in the afternoon, because that's not how physics works. And just to give you guys like the 30-second rundown, again, as an electrical engineer, I have quite a bit of technical experience when it comes to things in the science field. A lot of the winds are caused by thermal energy from the sun, right? So as you get more thermal energy in the air, it gets warmer. it tends to have more energy to try and move around. And that's why you see stronger winds in right around midday when, of course, the thermal energy from the sun is the highest, and why it tends to die down when you get close to night, right? It's also why in the morning you don't have a lot of wind, is there's less thermal energy. You're not exposed to the sun at that time of the day. So not to get too technical with it and everything like that, we should expect the afternoon winds to be higher. This is, regardless of what they say on Wind Finder. So again, I don't like to get too technical with things there. Again, it's even over my head. I just know that from a lot of other people that I interact with, or a lot of my friends that are in the aerospace engineering field. They've taught me those type of things. And yeah, it's going to be harder in the afternoon, right? So going to guys like Thagala that are teeing off towards, the middle of the morning, maybe 11 a.m., could see a little bit of an advantage. The guys at 2 under par, like a Matt Jones, 3 under par, like a Carlos Ortiz, Wyndham Clark at 2 under, Lanto Griffin, they're going to have a huge advantage. We know for a fact it's going to be extremely calm tomorrow morning. And because they're playing in twosomes off of the first tee, there's 74 players that made the cut. They're going to likely start teeing off at 8 a.m. Not Eastern time, local time, which is Central time over there. So they're going to be going out super early. I would expect those guys to finish their round by maybe 12 or 12:30 p.m. That's going to be a huge advantage. They're going to have pretty much no wind up until that point if it holds from what we saw on Thursday and Friday. So that's, of course, something that's baked into these projections. It's why I like some of these guys at 2-3 under par, like Lanto Griffin, Carlos Ortiz, Matt Jones, like I said before, that maybe aren't playing their best golf to this point, but they're relatively long off the tee. All 3 of those players certainly fit that build. They're also extremely aggressive players. So if I'm not going to get somebody that's been playing good golf to this point, that's a relatively aggressive bomber type of player, I'm going to try and take guys that maybe aren't playing so well, that are playing in the morning, of course, right? They're going out there. They're going to get a chance to get exposed to the best conditions humanly possible. So those are the type of plays I'm going to in the 8K range. CT Pan, he's kind of in the middle of the board, right? 6 under par. So he'll be teeing off in the afternoon, unfortunately. But from a skill set perspective, from a modeling perspective, you can see he's top 5 in recent form, top 20 in course fit ranking. So somebody I'll be willing to get to. Just, I like trusting the numbers on guys like CT Pan, where they're just head and shoulders better than other plays here, right? Like in Austin Smotherman. That's why we played him in our 4-round stuff. And I know I facetiously yesterday, mentioned that Austin Smotherman had no chance of making the cut. Boy, am I glad I'm wrong. Boy, am I glad he went out there and shot 6 under today, because I needed him. He's in a lot of my 6 of 6 lineups. I have Austin Smotherman there. I played 30% of them this week, so it's not a surprise that a lot of my 6 of 6 lineups would have needed somebody like an Austin Smotherman. But now he gets the tee off in the morning. He's coming in with all of that momentum. He's a bomber. He's an aggressive player. Austin Smotherman's going to be one of my favorite plays on the slate. He was today for Showdown, right? He was one of those guys that took it to 6 under par. You had to have him in these large field GPPs. And it would not surprise me if he did it again tomorrow. The guy is an absolute madman. Checks every single box that I'm looking for in terms of a DFS perspective tomorrow, much like he did today, right? I mentioned that he was playing in the morning today. That was the first check. Had the motivation to go out there and make the cut. Had to shoot something like 5 or 6 under par. Bomber off the tee, aggressive. Just, again, it's all of those same exact things for tomorrow. So that's where we're getting to him. And again, you wouldn't expect that from a guy that's at 2 under. It's because of how bad he was there on Thursday. Patrick Rogers, similar story at -7. Now, he's not teeing off in the morning, but bomber off the tee, coming in with good shots, gain metrics, aggressive player, high birdie or better percentage. So somebody I'm taking as a relatively low-owned flyer. You can see he's only owned in 11.2% of lineups. Grayson Sig will be teeing off early. He had a really disappointing day today, so I would expect his ownership to be a little bit lower than it should be. You can see right now I have it at just 11.9%. And I guess Charles Howell III is worth some consideration, right? I've had him in my 4-round stuff longer than people want to give him credit for. I'll definitely say that about Chucky 3 Sticks. The real issue with him is his consistency. He's not a very good putter. He's one of those pop putters. But much like those guys up top, right? Like a John Rahm, Tony Finau, Sebastian Munoz, Aaron Wise, Gary Woodland, all of these guys up top that we're taking above $9,000, they're going to be volatile in that category, and they're more GPP plays, right? So this is my GPP pool, of course, right? So I'm playing tomorrow 20 lineups. I'm going to have 20 combinations to hopefully take advantage of ceiling performances from, 3 to 4 of those players. If somebody like a Chucky 3 Sticks ends up going off with the putter, we end up getting a ceiling performance from Tony Finau with the putter. Maybe another one from somebody like a Matt Jones, right? Ends up going out there having a really solid round in the morning. You have all three of those guys in the same lineup. That's how you take down a GPP, right? So it's high upside, high risk plays that I'm going to in this circumstance. But for Showdown, that is the name of the game. You need to beat 20, 30,000 other people to take down one of these large field GPPs, which of course is always the goal of this video. Moving down a little bit further, we have Adam Long, who's 20% owned. Now, I love the guy, right? I have him in my 4-round stuff. Him and Smotherman were the same price. Both of them absolutely killed it today. I can't substantiate 20% ownership, right? When you have somebody in the 7K range who's twice as owned, maybe not twice as owned as everybody in this range, but a vast majority of it, just likely going to be a fade for me. And in this case, it is Adam Long, an inconsistent player at best. Now, he's not a bad player. He's just a little bit inconsistent at times. So certainly could go out there and crap the bet as chalk. Would not throw that past him at all. David Lipsky at -5. We've seen him have some nuclear low rounds. Just first-round leader performances. We've seen over the last month, particularly down during the Florida swing, him have those 5 to 6 under rounds, what we're looking for here in Showdown. So wouldn't put it past David Lipsky either of going out there and having a solid day. We'll catch up on chat. See, yeah, there are some questions down there. Nick says, Graham and Smotherman fought hard to make the cut, blew their wad, or you're playing their hot hand. Yeah, I love Smotherman. So I know I just mentioned him. Graham McDowell, I'm not so much sure I'm willing to play just because of the distance. He's not as much of like a ball striking specialist as somebody like a Smotherman, right? He's getting a little bit older. He's not so long off the tee. I'm not so excited about Graham, but yeah, very excited about Smotherman, like we just said. Expert says 10:43 first tee time, no advantage. I'm not sure if that's accurate. That might be 10:53 Eastern time. So go ahead and double check that for me before you come back here. I doubt that they're teeing off at 10:53 a.m. their time, just because they're teeing off in two sums and there's 74 people that made the cut. I'm not sure if that's, yeah, you said 9:53. Yeah, so it's Eastern time. Yeah, so there should still be an advantage then, right? If they're teeing off at 9:53, they're professionals. They'll finish in 3.5 hours. They'll be done by the time that the winds really kick up. So maybe a little bit less of an advantage than if they would have been teeing off at 8 a.m., but it'll still be there a little bit. Jeff, of course, says thoughts on Lashley and Stewart getting into the weekend. They're going into the weekend. Okay, not getting in. Sorry. Gotta read these things better. Sorry. I try to do them too fast here. Get too ahead of myself sometimes. Let me look at their stats because I'm not a huge proponent of either player, particularly Brian Stewart. I'm not a big Brian Stewart fan. You can't watch the guy in person. It's impossible. So let me bring up the shots gained metrics, do a deep dive on them. They're not people that I've already done this on. So I just want to make this as complete as possible. So it was Stewart and the other player was, let's see, Lashley. So let me look at them. And then I see a question about the Ortiz brothers. We'll do that as well. So we'll do deep dives on these 4 players before we move on the player poll. Let me go ahead and bring up Stewart. All right, so Stewart is at 3 under par. It's about what you'd expect for Brian Stewart. He's not really a high upside play. So that's why I'm a little bit hesitant, even before we get into the stats, to play somebody like Brian. But to this point, so through 2 rounds, he's losing off the tee. He's losing with the putter, which, that's interesting. He's not the best putter on tour, but he's usually better than, losing about half a stroke per round. But he's gaining on approach and gaining around the green. It's about an average play for me to have to say, man, with Brian Stewart. He's, kind of doing his thing where he's not gaining off the tee. He's not the best putter on the PGA Tour, and just at 3 under par, right? So I kind of question his upside because he's not really a ball striking specialist, because he's not, an Austin Smotherman, super aggressive iron player, just has a harder time shooting 6, 7 under par. So not going to be my favorite play there. And then you said Lashley. I believe Lashley's at 5 under. He had a really solid tournament so far. Yeah, Lashley's 5 under par. He shot 3 under today, so that's impressive. And for his shots gained, he's losing off the tee, losing about 0.2 strokes over his first 2 rounds, gaining 4.5 strokes with the putter. No, thank you. 0 Nate Lashley. Yeah, he's gaining all of his strokes with the flat stick, and Nate Lashley's not a good putter. So that's going to be a huge no for me. Nick Mars says the Ortiz brother. See, Steven says Viva Ortiz bros. Yeah, they're really cool. They're cool cats. Let's talk about Alvaro first, and then we'll hop into Carlos, which I think I already talked about. Carlos, absolutely love Carlos Ortiz. He's got that hometown thing going for him. He's played this golf course a million times. I think he's going to take this place super low here on Saturday or Sunday. So we don't even have to look into that. He's been hitting the ball beautifully. I know he's gaining off the tee. The putter hasn't really been amazing for him. It's just been above average. But in terms of Alvaro, we have him gaining 2.6 strokes off the tee. Holy moly. All right, we need to look up his driving distance. Once again, he's averaging 330. All right, Alvaro Ortiz is a fucking stud. Excuse my language, but this guy hits the ball 330 off the tee. Are you kidding me? He's getting 2.6 strokes off the tee this week. Are you kidding me? He's getting 2.4 strokes this week with the flat stick. Now, I don't think he's going to continue at this rate because he's still gaining a ton of strokes with the putter, but he's around neutral on approach. He's gaining a ton of strokes off the tee. If you're playing cash, that seems right up my alley. If you're playing a cash game, super cheap filler play down low, that's perfect because he's going to pretty much post that 1 to 2 under round every single day. I'm kind of like a Brian Stewart, right? He's not really a highly volatile type of player. But first 2 rounds, we've seen the positive end of that volatility, right? He's gained over 2 strokes with the flat stick. Again, I don't know anything about Alvaro. We don't see him very much at all, if ever, on the PGA Tour. So I don't know if he's a good putter all the time. I would doubt it. Just because those guys that are super long off the tee, unless you're named Grayson DeChambeau, 99% of them aren't very good with the putter. They're very long off the tee, right? They work with the ball striking. It's what they spend all of their time on. Not necessarily the best with the flat stick. So in general, I guess I'd say I love Carlos Ortiz, and I'd play Alvaro, and maybe smaller field stuff. Maybe if you're dealing with like a single entry, 2 to 3 max type of thing, where you don't have to have the ceiling of all ceiling type of performances. Caleb Turan, I'll be playing at -3. Just he's a high upside play at $7,200. He's extremely long off the tee. I don't know if he finished his round by the time I finished. Based on what Catch Me If You Can said, I think he might have missed the cut. So hopefully he didn't blow that down the stretch because I had him in a few lineups. But if he missed the cut, completely ignore that, completely disregard that, obviously. Hinckley Biota at -8, you could definitely take in lineups. He's long enough off the tee. He's not a bomber by any means, but really high upside putter. He's -8, so clearly playing some solid golf over the first 2 rounds. And one of the few guys towards the top of the leaderboard that I will be getting to because of the putting upside. Matt Wallace finally had a solid day with the ball striking, and I know I was early on him, right? I mentioned it as a risky play, but at this point, it's not necessarily a risky play anymore. Matt Wallace's ball striking is back. We saw it on Thursday. We saw it once again today. And just to give you an idea, just to go to the shots gained metrics, just to put it into words for you guys, because it's beautiful. I have 30% Matt Wallace, and he's 1% owned this week. It's a beautiful thing. But just to give you an idea of how much better he's hitting the ball today, first off, he made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 birdies or better today, including an eagle. Had 2 double bogeys. So if he didn't double bogey 2 holes today, would have shot a 61. Ridiculous stuff. I can't count. He would have shot a 62. Sorry, not 61. And then going to the shots gained metrics, he's losing off the tee, which is surprising for Matt Wallace, particularly at this type of venue. One thing he has 3 penalty shots to this point, so he is losing 1.8 strokes off the tee. Because of the 3 penalty strokes, that means outside of those 3 shots, he's probably gaining at least 2 strokes off the tee, right? Because you get a lot of negative points for having to add a stroke to your scorecard, obviously. But Strauss, can't speak now. For his approach numbers, oh my God, this is just beautiful. He's gained 5.8 shots to the field over 2 rounds. Just beautiful. I told you guys he was back. I saw it at the Zurich. He's back. You're not going to find somebody else in the field that's capable of doing things like that. Even Jon Rahm doesn't gain over 5 strokes to the field with the approach play in 2 rounds. Matt Wallace does, and he's done that in his career multiple times. He goes out there, and when he has his ball striking down, he's unbelievably sharp. So today after his round, he mentioned the 2 double bogeys, the fact that he should have been maybe 1, 2 strokes off the lead. I believe at that time, Jon Rahm was at 10 under par. He's like, yeah, man, I should have been tied for the lead. I truly think that he thinks he's going to win this event because if he keeps hitting the ball on approach like he is right now, the guy's going to go nuclear low. So this is somebody who I already have a ton going into the week. I've already put a lot of investment behind, but I'll be doing that once again tomorrow because, again, just he's hitting the ball unbelievably. He's had multiple eagle looks from like 2 feet on the week. He's made 2 eagles from less than 5 feet. On the drivable par 4 that they have here, he's been unbelievable over the first 2 rounds. Just he needs to stop hitting it in the water, right? He has those 3 water shots. They're the reason why he's not winning this event at this point. And if he can put those to the back burner, not let it burn him going forward, I'm going to have a really solid week. Hayden Buckley also striking the hell out of it. Just unfortunately can't putt for his life. He has like 5 or 6 3-putts on the week. A few really ugly chips where he left a few in a bunker today. On Thursday, also left a ball in a bunker. So maybe around the green play, maybe bunker play isn't the strong suit for a Hayden Buckley. But when we're talking about Showdown, we're hoping that he's not missing many greens to begin with. We're going to shoot something like 7, 8 under par. So I'm not going to let around the green play hold me back from taking somebody like a Hayden Buckley. Trey Mullinax at $6,800. He's -9. He's gaining off the tee, super duper long off the tee. And he's playing some good golf, and it hasn't just been this week. Over the last month, he's made some cuts. He's been much more consistent than what we're used to seeing from Trey Mullinax on tour. So I'll certainly be getting a little bit of him in lineups. We'll catch up on chat down here. Steven Davison says, won me money today. I'm assuming you're talking about both the Ortiz bros. Yeah, both of them had really solid days. Nick Marr says he's in, where I figured that he made it. He's a -3, so he would have had to completely eject himself from the event if he was going to miss the cut there. Jeff, of course, says, are we going to see round 1 or round 2 bird tomorrow? Man, I hope it's round 1 bird. I would assume round 2 bird, right? That's the bird that we're historically used to seeing, at least over the last year or 2 on the PGA Tour. But yeah, it'd be a good story to see him go out there and shoot 6, 7 under par again. He deserves it. He's Monday qualified like 4 or 5 times over the last 6 months on tour. And that alone is extremely difficult and worthy of praise here. We'll catch up on Nick's comments here, who says, I feel like Malnati goes low at least once in the 4 rounds every tournament. Yeah, he did that today, I believe, right? I don't know what he shot off the top of my head, but he always gets the hot putter going at some point. He always, is making those 20 to 30 footers when he's posting something super low. So completely agree with you there. Nick Marr says 65% Mullinax in round 4. That would be an interesting level of ownership. That's a lot. And Candy says early faves for next week. To be quite honest with you, Candy, I have not looked at it at all yet. So not something that I could really give you any type of information on because I haven't even done any research. So I don't want to just BS, make something off the top of my head here. If you're in the Discord or you're on my Twitter, I do post my first leans on there though. So I will do that whenever that happens. I just haven't gotten into it yet. So sorry, don't have anything for you yet. Let's catch up on the last play in my player pool, which is going to be Brandon Hagee at $6,600. And he's been in my player pool for all 3 slates, right? He was in my 4-round stuff, Thursday and Friday Showdown lineups. Will continue to be in my lineups because he's a high upside, super cheap play who's got the birdie or better percentage that we're looking for and the past palm stats we're looking for. He's been extremely successful in these tropical type of formats, long golf course, which plays into Brandon Hagee's skill set. And you've seen him have some success so far, right? Most notably, he shot 5 under round 1. I believe it was 4 under round 2. Maybe it was 6 and 3. It was something along those lines. Either way, very solid performance on both days. So it's going to be like 3% owned, which is, nothing for somebody down here at $6,600. So certainly somebody I'll be getting into quite a few lineups. And again, you got to be able to take some of these super cheap plays, particularly because we're going to start talking about strategy now. If you want to be aggressive up top, and I think Jon Rahm, considering how well he's been playing, is almost a must play, right? I'm going to have him in about 50% of my lineups, which means I'm still going to be trying to take some of these 9K guys with him. So if I'm taking a Jon Rahm and somebody like a Sebastian Munoz, Aaron Wise, Gary Woodland, I'm going to have to go into that 6K range once, maybe even twice to make a lineup. So guys like Hagee at $6,600 are really useful. Mullinax at $6,800 are useful. Hayden Buckley, so on and so forth. These guys that have just been absolutely striping the ball with their irons and their off the tee play to this point, that can spike the putter from time to time. So just certainly guys I'll be getting to there. You're going to have to take quite a few of them to make lineups here. Of course, in the 7K range, guys like Turan and Lebiota, I'll be having in plenty of lineups. Just, you're going to have to sprinkle in a lot of these value picks and kind of condense your player pool up top. So in lineups, I'm not taking Jon Rahm. I'm going to have a lot more of the guys in the 8K range. If I'm taking a Jon Rahm, it's going to make it a lot more difficult to get access to the 8K range. So that's certainly something to keep an eye out for when you're building lineups. Is some of the lineup construction opportunity costs that's involved. Because if I'm taking Jon Rahm and then another guy near $10,000, you're not going to be able to afford a guy in the 8K range, or at least comfortably afford somebody in the 8K range. You're going to have to take maybe 3 guys in the 6K range if you do something like that, which is at least a little bit past my comfort level. Not something that I'm always willing to do. But with lineups that I'm starting with Gary Woodland or an Aaron Wise is my most expensive player, which I am much more willing to do so in this type of format than I am for 4-round stuff. I know I get asked that question all the time, like, are you willing to skip the 10K range for your 4-round lineups? 99% of the time, my answer for that is no. But here for Showdown, I would actually encourage that, right? Because if you're starting with a Gary Woodland, you can take somebody like Gary Woodland, the Heath, Cameron Champ, maybe even add in somebody like a Carlos Ortiz, those 4 players into the same lineup, right? And then take 2 guys there in the 6K range. You can be a lot more aggressive and a lot more balanced with those type of builds. So just make sure you're tinkering around with that. If you're playing more than 5 lineups, I would recommend definitely changing up your lineup construction. Now, if you're only entering 1 lineup, of course you can't do that. Even if you're entering 2 to 3 lineups, probably can't do anything all that wild in terms of varying up your lineup construction. But that's always something to keep an eye on. We'll hop over to the Draftkings. We'll make a lineup. So let me go ahead and actually bring up the contest. Forgot to do that before the stream. And we'll catch up on chat before we do so as well. So 1 second here. Golf, Showdown, lovely. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen for you guys. All right, there we go. And we'll catch up on chat real quick as well. All righty, so Steven says, is Champ a Showdown play? I would agree. I think he is. He's going to be relatively high owned, but to this point of the week, he has shown it's a good course fit. I was worried about the around the green play and the putting, but the putting has actually been a strong suit for him. He's gaining to the field with the flat stick. And if Cameron Champ's going to be a gainer on these greens, maybe he has a thing for pass pull like a lot of the other bomber type of players do. Going to be a solid play. So yeah, he's gaining on the greens, unlike a guy like a Gary Woodland, Tony Finau. I don't want my entire player pool to be guys that haven't putted well to this point of the week, because God knows they could all go out there tomorrow and really shit the bed with the flat stick. Would not surprise me. So I am getting access to some of those guys that have been on the other side of that. Nick Moore says Minotti back-to-back 68s the first 2 days. Okay. So he's been a little bit consistent there. You might be onto something there, Nick. Maybe you want to play him there tomorrow, because you're right. He usually does have a ceiling performance out of the 4 rounds, particularly if he makes the cut. Just usually it's in round 1 or round 2. Usually that's why he makes the cut. That's why I was surprised it didn't happen there on Thursday or Friday, because he's usually dog shit when he's not going out there and shooting 6 or 7 under par. He's usually shooting 4 or 5 over par. So you could be onto something there, Nick. Maybe look a little bit more into those first 2 rounds. See if there's some blow up holes. See if he got lucky with a few putts, and he can use that to make a tie breaking decision on him. Because I'm not sure off the top of my head, to be honest. We have a question about Piercy. So yes, I will look into Robert Piercy, and let me find him here on the leaderboard. We'll look at his shots gain metrics, because he's also somebody I wasn't actively tracking, wasn't in my player pool. He shot 4 under over the first 2 days, 3 under today. So very solid round. In terms of his shots gained metrics, oh boy, he's gained 4.1 strokes to the round field with his approach play, which if you take a look at it round by round, that was 2.7 today. That's kind of what Scott Piercy does. It's kind of like a Matt Wallace. He's a really streaky iron player. So you like to see that. And losing with the putter. And that's also kind of what Piercy does. I could get myself some Scott Piercy, because he's doing what he usually does on tour. He's an elite level ball striker when he's playing his best golf. Off the tee is never really a strength for him anyways. So he's right around a neutral player, by the way, in that category. I'm okay with it. And Race's thoughts on Barn Rat. I love Kira deck. By the way, that hole in one on Thursday was beautiful. You love to see it especially from that type of a guy, just an unbelievable dude with the Avon Barn Rat. So let me go ahead and bring up his metrics. He's at 6 under. You would think that his, better of the 2 days would have been when he had a hole in one, but believe it or not, shot 5 under today, just 1 under on Thursday when he had the hole in one. But for his shots gained metrics, can't get on the Barn Rat. He's getting 2.6 strokes around the green and 2.9 strokes putting. Off the tee, he's losing to the field. He's lost half a stroke per round over his first 2 rounds. And he's neutral with approach play, and that's with a hole in one, right? So he gained 1.8 strokes, maybe even more than that to the field with the hole in one alone. That's concerning. Yeah, he actually managed to lose strokes to the field on approach on the first round. Today, he only gained 1 stroke to the field with his approach play and shot 5 under par. So yeah, that's concerning to me. Again, he had his best round humanly possible today was 5 under par, gaining 4 strokes with the short game. So yeah, I'm not sure I can get there on him. I love the guy though. He's one of the better characters on tour for sure. Let's go ahead and hop into a few lineups, right, to talk through some of our rationale here. And as per usual, we're going to do a GPP lineup, and then we'll go ahead and do a cash lineup and maybe a single entry lineup as well. We'll have to see if we have time for it. Well, we'll start it off with the GPP lineup. And by GPP, I mean the large field contest. So this is going to be for the 50K to first type of contest, 20, 30,000 entries. That sort of ball game. You guys know the deal. And for this lineup, I'm going to show you, we're going to do 2, right? I kind of always convince myself of this. When we have somebody that's super expensive on the board, it really changes up your strategy, right? So let's do a lineup with Jon Rahm, and then we're going to do one afterwards for a GPP without Jon Rahm, just so you can get an idea of how the lineup construction changes. So with Jon Rahm, can't speak now. With Jon Rahm in a lineup, you certainly have to be a lot more creative with your lineup construction. You're going to have to spend down low a little bit more. You're not going to be able to take these guys in the 8K range that you really wish that you could. So for my second man in, we're going to go ahead and take Sebastian Munoz. Absolutely love his upside. To this point of the week, has been hitting the ball pretty flushly. You can see that already puts us at $7,300. So that's really the main issue with a Jon Rahm, is it limits what you're able to spend. So for the next guy in, you can take somebody towards the bottom of the 8K range. We might get away with taking a Carlos Ortiz. Let's go ahead and try and do so. That puts us at $7,000. We're certainly going to have to be a little bit more conservative now with our last 3 spots. At this point, we have a relatively chalky Jon Rahm, which I'm okay with. I just think he's by far the best play on the slate. Middling ownership on Sebastian Munoz, low owned Carlos Ortiz. So let's try and make at least one more of these guys lower owned. So for our next man in, we're going to take Reese and Sig. I would expect him to be a leverage play that's starting towards the beginning of the day. That puts us at 67.5. So you can see we're already really getting down there in terms of our salary remaining. And we don't have many guys to choose from, right? We like Brendan Hagee down there at $6,600. But outside of him, there's really nobody else I like down there. With $6,900 remaining, you could go to Buckley. We could take somebody like a Molinax at $6,800. And yeah, it's pretty much between those two. So let's go ahead and just put Buckley in there. And you can see the consequences of taking a Jon Rahm, right? Because we're taking somebody at $11,000, you have to dive down to $6,600. Now let's show you what a lineup without Jon Rahm looks like. So let's try to be a little bit more balanced here. Take somebody like Aaron Wise, take a Gary Woodland in that same lineup. And we can go down here, take somebody like a Thagala, maybe even a Matt Jones as well, right? So we can take a ton of guys here in the 8 and 9K range, and that puts us at $6,900. So even though we're taking 4 studs, right, not the 2 studs that we had in the lineup prior, you can maybe say there were 3 studs with the other guy in the 8K range. We only have to go to $6,900, which really isn't all that bad, right? If we take somebody down here like a Trey Molinax at 68, go to $7,000, wrap it up with a Matt Wallace, right? So instead of going down to 66, $6,900 with a Buckley, somebody like a Brendan Hagee, get a little bit more consistent options. So this is what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of lineups where I'm living in the 8 and 9K range, or being extremely aggressive by taking somebody like a Jon Rahm in conjunction with another guy up here, perhaps even like a Tony Finau. I'd be willing to spend $21,000 between these 2 players to make a few of these lineups work. So that's what I'm looking at in these large field GPPs. Let's go ahead and move on to a cash build now, which the cash build is always a little bit more balanced. So kind of favoring the second build over the first build. We don't want to be all that aggressive up top. So if we're trying to take for cash, again, we're trying to get median build, right? Not necessarily upside. I think Gary Woodland in terms of median is going to be one of the best plays on the slate. In this 8K range, going to somebody like, even Cameron Champ at this point, based on what we've seen, should be a relatively solid option. Carlos Ortiz would also fit that bill with his familiarity with this venue. Lanto Griffin's always kind of like the cash play of the slate because of his pricing. The guy's always right around $8,000. That puts us at $7,800. Now, CT Pan, I love his modeling. I think he's another one of those kind of cash type of plays that you want to be targeting. And at $7,500, I'd pretty much just take Adam Long, right? He's going to be super chalky. Of course, in cash, that's kind of what we're looking for. We're trying to match what a lot of the field will be doing. And in cash, he might be 30, 40% owned. So this is the type of lineup I'd be going with, where my cheapest guy is down here at $7,500. And there's nobody in this lineup that you're really feeling, queasy about. You feel pretty solid about all these guys' chances to go out there, shoot at least 2 to 3 under par, especially a guy like a CT Pan. The guy is just a absolutely consistency machine. And a lot of the other players you can see that same type of thing about. Go ahead and catch up on chat before we hop out of here. If you do have any questions you want me to hop on or catch up on, make sure to go ahead and throw them down in chats. And Robert says, how bad? I have 80% ROM on 4-day stuff, and 3 out of my 4 of 6 of 6s don't have ROM. Boy, that's a bad beat, man. So you have 100. Did you have 150 lineups and you had 4 6 of 6s? I'm trying to do the math on this, dude, because there's an easy way to do this. Let's do this right now. All right, so you had 150 lineups and 80% of them had ROM. So that means that you had 120 lineups with John Rahm. So if you have 120 lineups with John Rahm and all 3 out of your 4 6 of 6s didn't have John Rahm. Okay, we can do this. It's in like the thousands of chances. I don't want to do the exact calculation. Yeah, dude, that's just a bad beat. Sorry to hear that, bro. At least one of them has it, right? You said 3 out of your 4 don't have them. At least one of them has them at the very least. All right, so that's all we're gonna have here for the chat, guys. If there are no questions to catch up on, hopefully you guys have a solid round 3 showdown. To this point, 4-round stuff's been pretty average for me. Just to go over to my lineups, tell you guys, where I'm standing at this point. I'm making 1.1x my entry fee. So as of right now, I'm in for $750, cashing right now for $830, which isn't really up to my standards, right? I do this week in and week out. For me, just hardly breaking even isn't really what I'm looking for. But in terms of my highest projected 6 of 6 lineup, we will go over that. It is John Rahm, Aaron Wise, CT Pan, Grayson Sigg, Matt Wallace, and Hayden Buckley. So the real issue here is the fact that we have Aaron Wise at -2. Before this day started, this lineup was actually higher on the list, right? So it actually went down the standings today with how some of these guys played. But considering that they're all at least in the 3 under par range, except for Aaron Wise, a lot of them 6 under par or better, 4 out of the 6. I'm liking my chances with it. So, of course, guys, best of luck with any of your 6 of 6 lineups that you have. In terms of my 6 of 6s, by the way, Rob, out of the 16 that I have, 4 of them don't have John Rahm. So not quite as bad of luck as somebody like you, but still obviously a little bit of bad luck there because I also had 80% John Rahm. So it's a little bit higher than what it should have been, but is what it is. I think a lot of that, by the way, too, is because the lineups without John Rahm, you didn't have to be as aggressive down low. So kind of like we showed there during the strategy section, you didn't have to take as many 6K guys. So it is easier to hit a 6 of 6. So maybe that's part of it, Robert. Of course, that's not included with the rough math that I was trying to estimate there. But keep that in mind. That's probably a lot of the reason for that too. Draft, of course, is points made the cut. Yeah, DA points, out of right field, short hitter, somehow made the cut. And you said you're the only one who owns them, I think. Probably, man. Good story, though. That's pretty awesome. And you said only 50 lineups. Hey, man, 4 out of 50 lineups with 6 of 6 is pretty solid then this week. I'd say, I believe the global average for 6 of 6 was right around 6.8% the last time I checked. That's better than average. So good for you, dude. It's pretty solid. I was right around average because I played 150 lineups, obviously. So that was the main difference there. But again, guys, I appreciate you guys stopping by. Best of luck for all of your lineups tomorrow. If you're watching this on replay and you have any questions, do not be shy at all to go ahead and throw them down below. We will have a prize picks video dropping here, I would expect, in the next half an hour to an hour. So go ahead and watch that, like that video when it drops as well. Until next time, guys, best of luck, and I'll see you guys.